November 9th, 1989, East Berlin. Günter Schabowski shuffles through his notes at 6:57 in the evening, reading words that will crack open 28 years of concrete and barbed wire. He stumbles over a single word, immediately. The room of journalists leans forward. What happens when a government spokesman accidentally opens the most fortified border on Earth? How do you tear down a wall that took decades to build? Can 28 years of division end in 24 hours? The Berlin Wall stood as the ultimate symbol of Cold War division since August 13th, 1961, when East German guards first strung barbed wire across the city. By 1989, it stretched 27 miles through Berlin with 300 watchtowers, 91 miles of additional barriers around West Berlin, and over 5,000 successful escapes on record. But on this Thursday evening, a bureaucratic mistake would unleash forces that no guard post could contain. 6:57 p.m., East Berlin Press Center, Mohrenstrasse. Schabowski faces Italian journalist Riccardo Ehrman and reads from new travel regulations. The rules allow East Germans to cross borders directly without the previous requirements for specific reasons. Ehrman presses, "When does this take effect?" Schabowski glances down, searches his papers, looks up. "As far as I know, immediately, without delay." 7:11 p.m. West German television broadcasts the stumbling press conference live. ARD anchor Hans-Joachim Friedrichs announces that the Berlin Wall is open. East Germans watching television in their apartments along Bernauer Strasse and Prenzlauer Berg grab coats and house keys. No one calls the border guards. 7:30 p.m., Bornholmer Strasse. Checkpoint. Border Guard Lieutenant Colonel Harold Jaeger stands in his office reviewing duty rosters when his telephone rings. Sergeant Klaus Feldman reports crowds gathering outside. Jaeger walks to his window and counts roughly 50 East Germans holding television schedules and demanding passage. The rulebook contains no protocol for this situation. 8:15 p.m. Jaeger calls his superior, Colonel Gerhard Lauder, at Border Regiment 33 headquarters. Lauder has no instructions. The chain of command breaks down as Lauder calls division. Division calls district. District calls the Ministry for State Security. Every office reports the same thing. No one authorized immediate border crossing. 8:45 p.m., Bornholmer Strasse. The crowd swells to 300 people. Jaeger orders his 28 guards to check every passport thoroughly, hoping delays will disperse the gathering. Guard Sergeant Helmut Kohlbeck processes each East German for 15 minutes, stamping papers with deliberate slowness. The line grows longer. 9:20 p.m. Jaeger receives his second call from Colonel Lauder. Still no orders from Berlin. The crowd now numbers over 1,000. Someone begins chanting, "Open the gate." Others join. The sound carries across the death strip to Western guards watching from their posts, 100 meters away. 9:53 p.m., Potsdamer Platz. Similar crowds gather at 6 other crossing points along the wall. At checkpoint Charlie, Major Helmut Stief counts 800 East Germans pressing against the barrier. His guards draw sidearms but keep them holstered. West Berlin police gather on the other side. Watching through binoculars, 10:35 p.m., Bornholmer Strasse. The crowd reaches 3,000. Jaeger stands before the checkpoint building as people surge forward. A woman holds up her infant son. A man waves his factory identification. They push against the metal barriers. Jaeger's guards look to him for orders. He has none to give. 10:51 p.m. Jaeger makes a decision that will echo through history. He orders guards Kohlbeck and Weber to open the barrier for 30 seconds, allow 20 people through, then close it again. The plan fails immediately. When the barrier lifts, hundreds surge forward. Guards cannot control the flow. 11:07 p.m. Jaeger abandons all pretense of document checking. He shouts to his guards, "Open everything!" The metal barrier swings wide. 3,000 East Germans pour through Bornholmer Strasse checkpoint into West Berlin. The guards step aside. 11:15 p.m., West Berlin side of Bornholmer Strasse. West Berlin Police Captain Wolfgang Schäuble arrives with 30 officers as East Germans emerge from the checkpoint tunnel. They embrace strangers, weep openly, bang on car hoods. Television crews race to the scene. Camera lights illuminate faces wet with tears. 11:28 p.m., Brandenburg Gate. Word spreads through both sides of the city. East Germans arrive carrying hammers, picks, and chisels. They begin striking the wall itself. Concrete chips fly. West Berliners climb onto the wall from their side, pulling East Germans up. Border guards retreat to their watchtowers and watch. 11:45 p.m., Arkas Potsdamer Platz checkpoint. Major Stief receives radio confirmation. All checkpoints report similar scenes. He orders his barriers opened. 800 people stream through. The sound of hammering concrete grows louder. November 10th, 12:15 a.m., At Heinrich-Heine-Strasse checkpoint, Guard Captain Ernst Miller reports to his log, "Barrier control abandoned. Checkpoint overrun. All personnel withdrawn to safe distance." Similar entries appear in logs at Warschauer Strasse, Oberbaum Bridge, and Sudden Alley. 12:45 a.m. Television crews from NBC, BBC, and ARD positioned cameras along the wall near Brandenburg Gate. Reporter Tom Brokaw broadcasts live as East and West Berliners attack the concrete with sledgehammers and pickaxes. Chunks of graffiti-covered wall fall into the death strip. 1:30 a.m. The first Trabant automobiles cross at Bornholmer Strasse. East German families drive their smoke-belching cars through checkpoints that had been sealed for 28 years. West Berliners line the streets, cheering and offering champagne bottles through car windows. 2:20 a.m. Brandenburg Gate. The symbolic center of divided Berlin becomes the focal point of celebration. Thousands gather on both sides of the gate. East German Border Guard. Captain Andreas Kitschmann orders his men to withdraw from the gate area entirely. The wall stands, but no one defends it. If you value documented Cold War and post-war history like this, subscribe. It's the best way to support our work. Now back to the story. 3:45 a.m. West Berlin Mayor Walter Momper arrives at Brandenburg Gate with a bottle of champagne. He climbs onto the wall and declares, "This is the greatest day in Berlin's post-war history." East Berliners below cheer and reach up to shake his hand. 4:30 a.m. East German television finally acknowledges the night's events. Announcer Klaus Feldman reports, "The border crossings are proceeding in an orderly fashion." The understatement of the decade plays to empty apartments as their occupants stand atop the Berlin Wall. 5:15 a.m. Potsdamer Platz. The sun rises over Berlin as thousands of people continue hammering at concrete. The sound echoes off apartment buildings that had faced the wall for decades. Residents open their windows and watch history reshape their neighborhood. 6:30 a.m. East German Prime Minister Hans Modrow convenes an emergency session of the Council of Ministers in East Berlin. Interior Minister Friedrich Dickel reports, "The border is no longer under state control." Defense Minister Heinz Kessler confirms that National People's Army units remain in barracks. The government that built the wall cannot tear it down. 7:45 a.m., Bornholmer Strasse. Lieutenant Colonel Jaeger completes his incident report. Border integrity compromised at 23:51 hours. Crowd control impossible. Checkpoint abandoned. He signs the document that formally records the end of the Berlin Wall's effectiveness. 8:20 a.m. West German Chancellor Helmut Kohl receives confirmation in Bonn that all Berlin Wall checkpoints report similar breaches. He cancels his scheduled trip to Poland and boards a helicopter for Berlin. The division of Germany begins to crack along with the concrete. 9:30 a.m. Brandenburg Gate. East German construction crews arrive with cranes and jackhammers, but instead of repairing the wall, they begin dismantling sections to create official crossing points. The decision comes from East Berlin's Mayor Erhard Krack, not from the central government. Work foreman Klaus Richter surveys the concrete barrier that his own crew helped build in 1975. Now he receives orders to tear it down. 10:15 a.m. The first official Wallpecker tour buses arrive from West Germany. Tourists pay 20 Deutschmarks to swing hammers at the wall under supervision. The pieces they chip off become instant souvenirs. Entrepreneurial East Germans begin selling wall fragments to Western collectors. Ingrid Miller, a teacher from Dresden, makes more money in one morning selling concrete chunks than her monthly state salary. 10:45 a.m., Bernauer Strasse. Television crews from 12 countries position cameras along the death strip. BBC correspondent Jeremy Bowen broadcasts live as families separated for 28 years embrace through gaps in the concrete. Margaret Thatcher watches from London. Ronald Reagan calls George Bush from his California ranch. 11:30 a.m., Checkpoint Charlie. American soldiers from the 6th Infantry Regiment document the chaos with official cameras. Captain Robert Sullivan reports to his commanding officer, "The most fortified border in Europe no longer exists as a barrier." His photographs will become evidence of the Cold War's sudden end. Soviet Colonel Viktor Petrov observes from his vehicle but receives no orders from Moscow. Noon, Potsdamer Platz. West Berlin police estimate 15,000 people now surround wall sections with hammers, pickaxes, and power tools. Officer Hans Dietrich coordinates crowd control as citizens attack concrete panels marked with decades of graffiti. The sound of metal on stone echoes through the square where Hitler's bunker lies buried 30 feet below. 12:30 p.m. East Berlin Council of Ministers building. Prime Minister Hans Modrow convenes his second emergency session in 18 hours. Stasi Chief Egon Krenz reports that his officers cannot contain the crowds. Interior Minister Friedrich Dickel confirms that police units refuse orders to clear the wall. The apparatus of control dissolves in daylight. 1:15 p.m., Bornholmer Strasse. Lieutenant Colonel Harold Yeager walks through his empty checkpoint building. His logbook records the previous night's events in mechanical detail: 23:51 hours, barrier opened under crowd pressure, border control abandoned, no injuries reported. The rubber stamps and visa forms sit unused on abandoned desks. 1:45 p.m., Brandenburg Gate area. East German Border Guard Captain Andreas Kitschmann receives his final radio communication from headquarters. Maintain observation posts, but do not interfere with civilian activity. His guards retreat to their barracks as thousands of people climb onto the wall directly beneath their watchtowers. 2:30 p.m., Warschauer Strasse crossing. The first East German families return from shopping trips to West Berlin. They carry Western goods, bananas, chocolate, blue jeans, and cassette tapes. Border guards who would have arrested them 24 hours earlier now help elderly shoppers carry their packages. 3:15 p.m., Friedrichshain District. East German television crews interview citizens streaming back from the West. Factory worker Dieter Hoffmann tells reporter Klaus Bednarz, "I bought oranges for my children, real oranges." His words broadcast live across East Germany as the government's narrative of Western poverty crumbles. 3:45 p.m., West Berlin Mayor's office. Walter Momper coordinates emergency services as 2 million people crowd into streets designed for normal traffic. Fire Chief Hermann Eichholz reports 18 minor injuries and 0 serious incidents. The celebration remains peaceful despite the chaos. 4:30 p.m., Alexanderplatz. East Berlin. Crowds gather around public television screens as state broadcaster ADN repeats footage of the wall opening. The same screens that showed party rallies for decades now broadcast the end of communist control. Citizens who avoided political gatherings for years now cheer openly in public squares. 5:15 p.m., Potsdamer Platz. The sun sets over Berlin as thousands of people continue hammering at concrete. The sound echoes off apartment buildings that had faced the wall for decades. Residents open their windows and lean out with cameras. Maria Schneider, age 73, witnesses from her 5th floor window the destruction of barriers that divided her street since 1961. 6:30 p.m., East German Politburo meeting, Central Committee building. General Secretary Egon Krenz faces 17 party leaders in emergency session. Defense Minister Heinz Kessler reports that army units remain in barracks under strict orders not to intervene. The Politburo that ruled East Germany for 40 years cannot control one night of celebration. 7:20 p.m., Bornholmer Strasse. Television journalist Günter Gauss interviews Lieutenant Colonel Yeager at the checkpoint where the wall first opened. Yeager speaks carefully. "We followed procedure until procedure no longer existed." He does not mention his personal decision to abandon border control. The interview airs on West German television 30 minutes later. 8:45 p.m., Brandenburg Gate. West German Chancellor Helmut Kohl arrives by helicopter and walks to the wall carrying a single white rose. East German citizens recognize him and chant his name. He places the flower in a crack in the concrete and speaks one sentence: "The wall must go completely." Television cameras record his words for history. 9:15 p.m., Checkpoint Charlie. American, British, and French military commanders meet in the Allied checkpoint building to assess the situation. General Robert Heiser confirms that NATO forces will not intervene. The Western powers that guaranteed Berlin's freedom now watch East Germans claim it themselves. 10:30 p.m., across all Berlin crossing points, border guards complete their final shift reports. Sergeant Klaus Feldman at Bornholmer Strasse writes, "Duty concluded, checkpoint secured, personnel withdrawn." Similar entries appear at Heinrich Heine Strasse, Oberbaum Bridge, Warschauer Strasse, and 7 other locations. The bureaucracy of division continues, even as division ends. 11:59 p.m. to November 9th, becoming November 10th. The Berlin Wall completes its first full day as an open border. Military logbooks record the transformation in precise detail. No shots fired, no arrests made, no injuries requiring hospitalization. The most militarized frontier in the Cold War becomes a public celebration in 24 hours. November 10th, 6 a.m. East German construction foreman Klaus Richter returns to Brandenburg Gate with his crew and official demolition orders. The same men who built wall sections now receive contracts to remove them. State planning meets revolutionary reality as bureaucrats organize the destruction of their own barrier. November 11th, 8 p.m. West German television broadcasts the first comprehensive footage of wall destruction to audiences worldwide. The images travel to Moscow, Washington, Beijing, and every capital where Cold War calculations suddenly require revision. The balance of power shifts with each swing of a hammer. November 13th, Potsdamer Platz. The first official ceremony marks the wall's opening. East and West German officials break ground for future construction projects in the Death Strip. Mayor Walter Momper announces plans to build a memorial where the wall stood. The space between East and West begins filling with new possibilities. December 3rd, Brandenburg Gate. East German work crews create the first official pedestrian crossing through the gate since August 1961. The opening ceremony includes Berlin Philharmonic musicians playing Beethoven's Ninth Symphony in the area where tanks once faced each other across concrete barriers. December 31st, 1989. The wall still stands in most places, but it no longer divides Berlin. Official demolition begins in June 1990 under contract with East German construction company VEB Tiefbau. Work crews use specialized equipment to remove 27 miles of concrete barrier, 91 miles of surrounding walls, and 300 watchtowers. January 15th, 1990. The East German government begins auctioning wall sections to private collectors. Each concrete panel weighs 2.6 tons and sells for between 500 and 1,500 Deutschmarks. American businessman David Hasselhoff purchases a section for his California home. March 18th, 1990. The first democratic elections in East Germany since 1932 produce a parliament committed to reunification. The political wall falls as decisively as the physical barrier. Helmut Kohl's Christian Democrats win 40% of East German votes on a platform of rapid unification. October 3rd, 1990. German reunification becomes official at midnight as East Germany ceases to exist as a separate state. The constitutional process takes 11 months. The Berlin Wall fell in 11 hours. The final section falls on November 9th, 1991, exactly 2 years after Günter Schabowski's mistaken announcement. But the most heavily fortified border in Cold War history actually ended in 24 hours, not 28 years of gradual negotiation. Harold Jaeger, the border guard who opened Bornholmer Strasse checkpoint, retires quietly in 1992. He never receives official recognition for his decision to abandon his post. Günter Schabowski serves 3 years in prison for his role in building the wall, not for accidentally opening it. The man whose stumbled words ended the Cold War's most visible symbol dies in obscurity in 2015. Italian journalist Riccardo Ehrman, whose question triggered Schabowski's fateful answer, continues reporting until 2007. His single word, when, changed the course of history, but he never claims credit for ending the Cold War. The question was routine. The answer was not. The concrete that divided a city for nearly 3 decades crumbled in a single night because one bureaucrat misread his notes and one border guard refused to shoot his own people. The Berlin Wall fell not to policy or diplomacy, but to human error and human decency operating simultaneously in the span of a television news cycle.